If you were to walk into a cathedral in medieval France during the dead of winter, you might expect solemn hymns, candlelight, and the heavy silence of devotion. But once a year, for one wild day, the sacred world did the unthinkable. It flipped itself upside down. This was the Feast of Fools, a celebration that shocked kings, terrified bishops, and delighted the ordinary people who lived on the edge of hunger and cold. And this is the forgotten story of the day Christmas went completely wild. Imagine this. A bishop in full robes walks through the nave of a grand medieval cathedral. Except those aren't robes, they're patched rags. And that isn't a bishop at all. Qu'est a beggar, crowned king of misrule, qu'est. Behind him, the choir, trained, dignified, respected, begins a holy hymn, and suddenly erupts into braying like donkeys. The congregation roars. No one stops it. 'Cause on this day, in 1400s France, chaos was tradition. Welcome to the Feast of Fools. To understand why the feast existed, you need to understand the world around it. The 1400s were not gentle. Winter meant darkness, hunger, and fear. Crops were dead. Families prayed their grain stores would last. Disease crept through villages with the cold. People needed release, something to break the tension of a life spent in silence and obedience. And so, once a year, France cracked open a door and let mischief slip in. What followed was part ritual, part rebellion, part survival mechanism. Because laughter wasn't just entertainment, it was medicine. The Feast of Fools grew out of earlier Roman winter festivals, especially Saturnalia, a celebration where masters served slaves and order collapsed for a brief, joyous time. By the Middle Ages, Christianity dominated Europe, but people didn't forget the old rhythms of winter. Instead, the traditions merged. The feast became a pressure valve tucked between Christmas and Epiphany. It was hosted by the lowest-ranking clergy, the young clerks, the choir boys, the assistants who usually lived invisible lives in the shadow of great cathedrals. For one sacred day, they ruled everything. During the Feast of Fools, hierarchy flipped. The lowest cleric was elected Bishop of Fools. Priests traded their vestments for rags, clownish hats, and donkey masks. Processions paraded through the streets with drums, pipes, and ridiculous costumes. Inside cathedrals, something even stranger happened. Serious hymns were replaced with mock chants. The sacred incense was swapped for soot or dirty straw thrown into braziers. Holy readings were done in silly voices. Some accounts describe clergy dancing in circles around the altar. Others mention a donkey being marched into the sanctuary, where the choir sang, Hinhan, Hinhan, the sound of a bray echoing against stone walls that usually heard only prayers. To modern ears, this sounds outrageous. But to medieval people, it was a known, even expected tradition. They believed the world needed this day of inversion to avoid exploding under winter's weight. Historical records describe the feast with vivid detail. In Paris, the young clerics would storm through the streets, drumming on pots, waving torches, chanting improvised verses that mixed prayer with mischief. In Sens Cathedral, the Bishop of Fools was carried on a donkey through town, blessing people with handfuls of ashes. In Rouen, the clerics performed mock sermons about gluttony, drinking, and the foolishness of earthly power, a comedy show disguised as religion. And yet, under all of this, there was a hidden seriousness. The feast reminded people that the powerful were still human, the sacred could still be joyful, and laughter could banish fear. For one day, everyone breathed again. By the late 1400s, church leaders had had enough. They saw the feast as disrespectful, even dangerous. Letters from bishops complained about indecent dances in holy places, obscene songs sung in the choir, clerics wearing women's clothes or animal skins, a donkey braying the final blessing. The church tried repeatedly to ban it, but the people resisted because they needed it. Powerful clergy were afraid the feast blurred the line between worship and mockery. But ordinary villagers saw it as a way to survive emotional exhaustion. Still, by the mid-15th century, church pressure finally crushed the tradition. The Feast of Fools was declared, a devilish excess unbecoming of Christians. But its spirit didn't die. Then, as the feast vanished, its energy lived on in later celebrations. In France, it helped inspire Mardi Gras, with its masked parades and role reversals. In England, it shaped the Lord of Misrule, appointed to oversee Christmas revelries. In Germany, it echoed in Fastnacht, the pre-Lent carnivals. And in theaters across Europe, it birthed Christmas pantomime, full of slapstick humor and topsy-turvy roles. Wherever winter weighed heavily on people, they found a way to fight back with joy. The feast was gone, but its heartbeat continued. Today, our holidays are orderly, polished, commercial, curated for photos. But the Feast of Fools reminds us that Christmas was once wild, human, imperfect, loud. It wasn't about gifts or perfection. It was about relief. The medieval world understood something we often forget. Laughter keeps the darkness away. Every age finds its way to cope with winter. For us, it might be movies, parties, lights, memes. For them, it was putting donkey ears on a priest and singing until the cold didn't matter. So what happens when Christmas turns upside down? A truth emerges. Beneath the chaos and comedy, the Feast of Fools wasn't an insult to faith. It was a celebration of being human. A reminder that even in the holiest spaces, there's room for joy. That sometimes we need madness to stay whole. Maybe that's why the feast lingers in our imagination. Because every one of us, at some point in winter, needs one day when we can laugh at the world and let the world laugh back. Would you dare join the Midnight Feast of Fools?